right, so I have this Digitech Whammy 4. It's one of my favorite effects to use, but after a certain amount of time, it stopped doing what it's supposed to do, and when I would trigger the effects, this would not cycle all the way through, and the foot pedal part would not give me the full range of the actual effect. So, and because it wasn't working anyway, and because I had received no support from Digitech, and most of the stuff I found online was like, go ahead and reset it by unplugging and doing the whole thing, and that didn't work. I took it into my own hands and said, you know what, let's just go for it and see what happens. So this is my fix, and it got this Digitech 4 Whammy working back to how it normally did. So I've got the Deoxit D5, which is the sort of industry standard, removing oxidation cleaning connections for electronics. Small screwdriver, large screwdriver. We're working with a 7/64 Allen wrench and a little tray to keep stuff in, but also a 9/16 wrench and a 1/2-inch wrench, or I do have these 3D printed ones that I found online through Thingiverse. So let's go ahead and start taking this thing apart, and I'll show you what I did to fix it. So let's start with, go ahead and removing the nut that's around the actual foot switch. So I want to hold on to this gently so it doesn't move and I don't break any electronic connections, as I've already been through that and had to resolder. So pull off the knob carefully, and then we're going to use the second size here. I know I have this upside down, but that's because part of this broke. So normally I like the other part there, but it's not gripping as it normally should. So we got those 9/16 first, 1/2-inch second. This one does not have a washer, but the effect dial does, so we're going to carefully get that off. Now that makes these loose. Now it's time to go ahead and grab our hex key, our Allen key, whatever you feel like calling it. And each of these has its own little washer, so be careful not to lose those as you work. All right, so we sped things up there a little bit. The next step before we can actually remove this from the casing is to turn it to the side and remove the two small screws with a smaller screwdriver that hold the plug for MIDI. So we're going to pull these two out. Careful not to drop them in the input, and we'll set those aside. So at this point, our pedal is ready to open, but the first thing we will want to do is take this top part, kind of put our fingers against here, and slide the whole thing to the left, so that gets these parts to protrude, and that frees up any electronics here from getting caught. So we set that aside. You'll just see something that dropped out was a plastic washer that goes on the underside of the actual foot switch. So this goes here, it came from here, popped right off, so I had to grab it from the floor. So keep your eye out for that in case it starts to wander on you. Now, be careful, because you don't want to break any of these connections. I had to resolder because of having to take this apart before to try and fix it. But now we've got this part that's loose with the LEDs, but this is all solid until we remove our 4 screws on top. Now our goal is to get the whole thing apart so we have access to every part of the electronics. Because again, I just went to shoot for whatever I thought might work. It was kind of a Hail Mary to see, and now we should be able to gently pick these parts up and hold everything safe. If you look on the foot switch, it has this sort of like not optical, but just a clear plastic piece. They changed them to optical, I think, in the 5 and after, but this is what helps with the sweep of your effects. So we're going to hit that with a microfiber cloth just to kind of clear off any problems that are there, even though it has some felt to begin with. So the next thing I want to do is take my Deoxit spray. Now, I would normally recommend that you have a paper towel or an old towel or something down, because this can get a little bit messy, especially with how we're going to use it. So I'm going to pretend that I did, or pretend that I'm doing what I'm doing, because I've already sprayed this, and you can see there's a little bit of residue still there that's drying up. So what I ended up doing was giving this a full coat of Deoxit, same with the back of this, and then I used a paper towel to dampen it, just to get some of the excess off. I also flipped it over. I made sure to spray inside the connectors as well as the power source plug inside these capacitors here. I threw some into the MIDI just to be safe, and then also in the output. But I also gave it a once over on every single part of this. Again, not knowing if that was going to ruin it. I also made sure to go ahead and spray some deoxit inside where this knob is, this potentiometer, and then I went ahead and spun it several times. And then on this particular piece, looks like I'm gonna have to solder again, I would spray inside here and go ahead and activate this multiple times just to get things happening. Again, went back in with paper towel, cleaned up as much as I possibly could, and then basically we'll do the reverse to put stuff back together, but I'm going to go ahead and solder this in place first. Okay, so I'm back. I just resoldered the two connections on the actual foot switch part. Side note, I do not recommend this third hand whatsoever. It worked only in the sense that I got a light and a magnifier, but anyway, that's besides the point. So let's go ahead and put this back together. I'm going to go ahead and take microfiber cloth and gently pull whatever extra residue or something that may have built up on this plastic little angled piece. I'm going to do a little bit on this side. And I don't know if we can even get into the other one, but let's just, yeah, that didn't do much, but okay. So let's put this thing back together. I'm going to be careful here. Slide the LEDs back in. And you also want to make sure that this cording is in between these two, otherwise it doesn't have enough to wrap around. Found that out the hard way one time, but you want to make sure that this makes its way through. All right. So let's start off by placing the circuit board back in with its 4 screws. I do the first one not completely tight. It's just good practice if you have multiples to do that you would set maybe some corners first and then set them further in just to make sure the spacing stays appropriate and you don't have a struggle. So then these last two should go in pretty smoothly. Okay, the next step will be to grab that white plastic washer that we saw flying earlier. Make sure it's clear. A few extras just couldn't hurt. Now when tightening the nut on the other side, I do want to try and hold this in this position so it doesn't twist and pull the wires more than it needs to. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it, but hold that in place and put the larger 9/16 nut on. And then again, we'll grab our wrench. You could use an adjustable too, obviously, but I like these little 3D printed ones. So we're going to tighten that up, just sort of finger tight. Make sure it's not bent too much on the back. And then we have the loose LED panel that we need to secure as well. Remember, this one had a little bit of a washer first. And then, whoops, and then it goes second. Again, kind of broken, so we'll flip it upside down. Just sort of hand tight. Now we can put, there's no particular special way this needs to go. Just place it on. We can see our LEDs are popping up. And then the last things we have are the MIDI, as well as the hex nuts to go onto, or hex screws. So we're going to start off again by placing this in, pushing it out so you can see them protrude on the left side. Allows this to sit in flush, and then we line up these 5. So I'm going to start with the first one. Again, twist it in slightly, get them all placed, and then we'll use the hex key to get them more secure. We just want to line them up first. The trickiest ones are over here next to the actual pedal part. All right, so essentially what we did so far is pull it apart. We blasted everything with deoxit to clean those connections, and fingers crossed, hope that it worked beyond the other suggestions that I've had. I have not seen any other solutions to this problem mentioned. So considering I was really not interested in buying a new whammy pedal, that I really like this one that I've had for quite a long time. I was like, what do I got to lose to go ahead and mess with it, like I said. Okay. We're almost there. Gotta say though, not the hardest thing to take apart necessarily. Just gotta remember what order we did things in. So last ones are the MIDI port. We're gonna put these tiny screws in with the tiny screwdriver. You can see I've lost a little paint here from taking it apart and trying to mess with it before. Okay, all right, we are back together. Next step will be plugging it in and double checking that it worked. Okay, so a moment of truth. Here's the final test. What they recommend, at least for recalibrating, is to unplug the power source, which I've done here. And then you're asked to press the foot switch in, power it back up until you see the blinking light, let go, and then press the foot switch one more time. And we seem to be back online. There we are with our clean tone. We're going to try it first. Let's just see, do we get the full range of motion? This did not happen before, but now I am actually able to go ahead and turn to get every effect working. So we're on, and let's see, can we drop tune? Seems good so far. What about a dive bomb? Let's go back up. That buried itself pretty well. 2 octaves down, 1 octave down. So far, satisfied. This is the result I got before, and it was not doing this, so. All right, so there we go. I'm pretty proud of the result, and I hope this helped if you're having the same issue, because this has been bugging me for months. So enjoy.